G'day everyone, today I'm going to show you how you get back to running as soon as possible after your ACL reconstruction. My name is Alex, I'm the sports physiotherapist and welcome back to my channel. Yes, today I'm going to show you how I get my patients back to running as soon as possible after the ACL reconstruction. So I'm a sports physiotherapist. I currently work in professional rugby league. I know what it's like to go through an ACL rehab. If you're watching this video and you've just injured your ACL for the first time, or if you've injured it again for the second time, this video is aimed at getting you back to running as soon as possible. These exercises will help you to develop good foot, ankle and leg strength to stop your leg collapsing when you run. Putting your leg into the ACL tearing position and that fresh graft is at risk. So if we're going to be running like this, it's going to be even more likely because you haven't been exposed to proper running preparation and you're going to develop bad habits. Remember, nearly everyone post-surgery gets back to running, but not everyone gets back to running properly at 12 weeks or even 12 months if you don't address the problem. There is a lot of mystery when it comes to when can I start running. So let's break it down. Most surgeons for ACL only patients won't want any running inside the 12 weeks. So this is just ACL only injury. But this kind of depends on your surgeon. For ACL and meniscus, it's longer and generally between 4 to 6 months before you can start running. The surgeon's concern comes from the danger to the new ACL graft and the meniscus repair. However, if we are safe, there is no reason we can't start preparing you to run so that when you meet the surgeon's criteria, you get that green light, you're good to go. Pure ACL only patients can hit the ground running at 12 weeks if everything goes according to plan, which I will show you today. However, this can only happen by starting running preparation plyometric exercises early and not waiting till after the green light to start the process. I know a lot of you had heard that ACL surgeries fail, but statistically we know that only 30% of ACL patients complete plyometrics and agility before returning to sport. So by watching this video, by doing these exercises, you're going to be ahead of 70% of other people in your exact same position and improving your chances of success. My running preparation exercises start at around 3 to 4 weeks after surgery. So your goal by this time should be to have a quiet knee, which means there's minimal swelling. If you can't see your kneecap, it's probably too soon. So make sure the swelling's down. It's not overly hot to touch. And you have no quads lag, which means that you can perform a good straight leg raise with solid strength in your leg. So once you've done that, let's start with exercise 1.
Alright guys, our first exercise is double leg wall posture holds. Now before we get on the wall, make sure you have a posteriorly tilted pelvis, which means we are tucking our pelvis underneath us, which gives us a strong starting position that's required for fast upright running. Now place both hands on the wall, elbows locked, whilst walking backwards until we can assume a 45-degree angle relative to the wall, whereby our feet are fully extended, so we're on our tippy toes, our knees are extended as much as possible with the range of motion you have, and we're also making sure our hips are fully extended as well by being in that tucked pelvic tilt position. So guys, by becoming proficient at this exercise, we're going to be assuming our running position, that 45-degree position, is mimicking your run position. You're achieving a triple extension, which is really important for being explosive. It's how we're going to jump, it's how we're going to run. So you already can see how we're preparing you to get back to running at sort of early 3-4 weeks after surgery, after your knee is quietened down and you're able to achieve this position. Once you get proficiency here, we're able to move on to the next exercise. Okay, so we're going to move on to exercise 2, which is toe walking. This is a great exercise to work on your triple extension position. To achieve this exercise, your ankles, knees, and hips are locked in that triple extension position, and it's working on isometric strength of your calf and of your ankle. Isometric just means you're really strong at holding it in the one place. So this exercise is strengthening you to maintain that position. It's a great way to work on the rigidity of the ankle. This will give you that firm, powerful push-off you're looking for when you are back sprinting. A lot of the times with ACL patients, they don't want to get into that triple extension position because it's quite painful or has been painful in the past, and they just don't have the strength to actually achieve that position. So by doing these exercises, you're going to be ahead of the game here. The toe walking exercise is important as it is a bridge into our next wall exercise, the single leg wall posture hold. Starting in the same position as the double leg in the triple extension position, have the leg you want to work on stay on the ground whilst flexing your opposite hip into the running position as seen here. We then want to dorsiflex our ankle by bringing our big toe up as high as we can. By dorsiflexing your ankle, you create a strong, flat surface that will allow you to make strong, efficient contact with the ground, allowing you to be explosive. A floppy ankle will result in a sluggish and inefficient ground contact. This will lead to poorer acceleration and top speeds, whilst also putting more pressure on your knee and knee muscles to create the stability. So this is a challenging exercise. Make sure you film yourself doing this exercise and be very critical of your triple extension position. Is your ankle locked? Is your knee locked? Are your hips tucked and locked? And also be critical of your flexed leg and the dorsiflexed ankle, as for the reasons mentioned just before. Make sure you do this exercise on both legs. You're going to use both when you run. I don't let my patients once again move on from here until they are proficient with this exercise. This is the fundamentals of running. If you can't achieve this position, there is no point in running, even if you are actually able to tolerate running, because you're not going to run efficiently. I promise you'll get back to running, but it's whether you'll get back to running as well as you can and being at a better state than you were prior to your injury. Alright guys, it's time to work on our eccentric strength and work on eccentric strength development through our next exercise, which is double leg landing preparation. So we're going to take our technique from our wall exercises and we're going to start on the balls of our feet, assuming the triple extension position. Our goal is to not jump, however, but pull ourselves down into an optimal landing position. What we want to see is bending at our knees and hips together. Now this is important as the majority of women are quad dominant or knee dominant with their landing pattern. This puts women at risk of an ACL injury as their strategy for landing feeds into the mechanism of how we injure our ACL. Make sure to pause and hold your bottom position. Also make sure that your knees are staying in line with our second toe. If our big toe is the first toe, our second toe is the one next to that. This will make sure that our knees don't come inside and valgus, which is part of the ACL injury mechanism. So we move our knees and hips together, and as an added challenge, try to land as softly as possible. This means that your muscles are working harder eccentrically to dissipate your body weight and the forces of the jump, which is a much better landing strategy than landing loudly, where there's a lot more forces being put through our body that we're not compensating for through our muscles. Our next exercise is exactly what we did before, but adding more weight. This means that we're having to load ourselves more eccentrically and become stronger eccentrically. So we're going to increase the load on the body to increase our strength. Preferably this would be done with a trap bar, but at the moment I don't have access to one, so I thought of just using a backpack and it seemed to work quite well. So the technique is the same as the unweighted version or just the body weight version. Make sure that your technique is flawless, guys, from the start in your triple extension position into your squat land and into your pause. Don't skip out on the technique. This is so important. Now it's time to move on to single leg landing preparation. Now I get this may be super challenging mentally for some of you, but that's where our good preparation comes in. Not just from this video, but from previous ones that I've done. My patients at this point will have been developing strong quads with leg press and single leg squats, strong glutes and hips from bridges and side planks, crab walks. And what this has done is prepared them for doing these more challenging tasks. The same principles apply here with the single leg variation. So we start with two legs, we get into our triple extension position, and we work on that pulling down into the ground. We're trying to get that simultaneous hip and knee movement and also control the landing and make sure our knees stay inside our big toes. So our knees are tracking towards our second toe, they're not coming inside, we're not valgusing. And now the next big thing is obviously our hips and trunk, which is the added difference. Now we have to land on one leg, our trunk's going to be, having to balance. So when we land double legs, our center of mass is between two legs. It makes it easy for our hips to stay in neutral. It's much harder to stay on one leg. So our goal is to keep our hips as level as possible, and we don't counterbalance ourselves or compensate for poor technique with large trunk counterbalancing. So as seen in the video here, I land and then use my trunk to try to counterbalance myself. We don't want to rely on that. We want to have good control and strength through our hips and our quads and good coordination with the task. Now we can obviously then make this harder again. So we can add the backpack, we can add a trap bar, and we can therefore increase the amount of resistance that we are doing, which is therefore going to increase our tolerance and our eccentric strength, which is going to mean that we can absorb more forces when we get to running. Now this is important because when we run, we can put between 1.1 times our body weight up to 7 or 8 times our body weight. So cricket players, for example, when they bowl, will get up to 8 times their body weight or more through their front leg when they land. So depending on what sport you play, you're going to have eccentric strength that matches. And that's why when we change direction at high speeds, if you don't have really high eccentric strength, you're really going to struggle. You're not going to be able to actually tolerate changing direction, and it's going to put your knee at risk if you don't have that strength and control to stop your leg going forward, which is the first half of that ACL tearing position. Alright guys, it comes to time that we've got to get our feet off the ground, so we're doing a little bit of jumping. Now we want to make sure that we're just doing a squat jump and land. A squat jump is where we're already in a loaded spring position. We're not standing tall and then dipping down. I'm doing this because it just takes out one extra component to practice initially, and then we'll go into a full jump after. So this doesn't have to be more than a hop. It's the technique that we're really trying to hammer down here. So I prefer the squat jump because we just take out the initial dip and we make sure that we replicate the technique from our double leg landing preparation exercise we've done earlier. So what we want to do is get down into our squat position, make sure our knees are sort of in that direction towards our second toe. We're using a hip and knee dominant motion. We're driving up, triple extension position. We're landing, and when we land, we make sure that our knees track in the right direction. We're not overbalancing with our trunk. We're not being knee dominant, and we're landing softly. Once we've done this, we can then go to a single leg jump and to a 2-leg land, keeping all those same principles, but with more of an emphasis on our trunk and hip position when we land on a single leg, because it's a lot harder to land on one surface, being our one leg, as opposed to using 2 legs. And then from here, we can obviously go into a single leg jump, into a single leg land. Once we've mastered this, we can just go into a full jump, which has the initial dip. The reason why this is a little bit challenging is for some people on the initial dip, their knees will come in as just a force of habit that they've developed in the past. We want to make sure that when we dip into our jump, our knee is still tracking sort of towards that second toe. Our knees aren't valgusing, we're not knock-kneeing ourselves. So make sure the knees stay in that sort of line towards our second toes. We're hip and knee dominant movement on the land. Our trunk is obviously in a nice central position and we're landing softly. We can then do the same progressions where we go on to a single leg jump to a 2-leg land, and then obviously go into a single leg jump to a single leg land. And that's going to be our progression for these exercises here. Okay guys, it's time to visit one of my favorite exercises in this progression, which are pogos. Pogos are a great exercise to do once we've mastered our single leg jump. So instead of going into continuous or repeat jumps, we're going to dive into these pogo exercises. They are a relatively stiff leg jump exercise. This exercise will help to develop springiness and stiffness in your lower limbs, which will make you feel less sluggish and more powerful. Starting in a standing position, dip down as if you're about to jump and push hard with your ankles whilst extending your knees to pop up. Pretty simple. Now, whilst in the air, focus on keeping your ankles dorsiflexed like in our wall drills. By landing in this ankle position, you'll be able to optimize force transfer with the ground. So this essentially makes you feel like a spring and less sluggish. So when landing in that dorsiflex position, allow your knees to bend a little bit like you would normally, and then combine them together for a powerful push-off, which is your triple extension position. The key is keeping our volume low, but our technique on point. So 1 to 3 sets of 3 to 6 reps, and focus on trying to spend as little amount of time on the ground as possible. Think about being a spring and popping up. Once we've mastered the double leg pogo, we can then try the single leg pogo. It's quite challenging, you won't get as high, but it's definitely necessary for us to build that springiness on both of our legs. The technique is the same. Just make sure that when we're doing our single leg, our knees aren't tracking in, we're not valgusing, we're not knock-kneeing ourselves, and also don't sort of overbalance or compensate with your trunk to the side or too far forward. Think about having your foot in that dorsiflex position for landing and then focusing on that triple extension for takeoff. So once again, volume is not the key here, it's about the quality. Alright guys, now we're going to start putting it all together by doing these single leg march exercises. To do this, we're going to jump back on the wall and assume our triple extension position from our single leg wall posture holds we did right at the start of the video. So that's getting onto the wall in our stacked position, triple extension, ankles locked out, knees locked out, hips locked out. Our opposite leg is going to be flexed at the hip. We're going to make sure we cock that ankle in a dorsiflex position, and we're going to strike the ground hard and pull back up. As seen in the video, this is a great way to move quickly. It'll help to build your confidence that you can move your leg quickly. We're building some early plyometrics. This is a great way to get you feeling confident for when you're about to take your first run. We build our confidence in this exercise, and then we're going to go on to single leg exchanges. Spend as long as you need to at this phase. There's no need to rush. You can see how at this point you're starting to look like you're ready to run. You've got that confidence, you've got that robustness, and when we feel we're able to achieve a 1 to 3 sets or 3 to 6 reps and do it with quality, we're right to move on to the exchanges. Now we're doing full exchanges where we swap from one leg onto the other. The same principles apply of the triple extension and the dorsiflex foot on the opposite leg. Make sure that our heel doesn't touch the ground as our weight transfers over onto the opposite leg. Continue doing this until you get proficiency, and then we can move on to doubles, triples, and sixes. Now we're going to move on to more running-like exercise with our alternating marches. We're trying to spend as little amount of time as possible on our opposite leg in the second part of the movement. So as we exchange from our stance leg onto our opposite leg and then back to our stance leg again, we're trying to spend as little amount of time as possible on the ground. Start off with marches by 2, just alternating to get the transfer and make sure that when we hit the ground, we're still maintaining our triple extension position. Our knee isn't bending as we hit the ground. Our ankle, our heel isn't hitting the ground as we exchange, and that we're still maintaining our hips in that posterior tilt position. We're still squeezing and maintaining this triple extension position because this is how we maintain our springiness in our body as we get back into running. If we can't maintain a strong triple extension position, you'll feel sluggish, your knee will bend, and will be at a little bit more of a risk when we can't develop the strength required when we get back into our sport to prevent an ACL injury. Now, once we've mastered this, we can go on and progress to sixes and even continuous 7 to second round bursts. The final step is then to add in arm swings. But when you're doing your sixes and sevens, just make sure you maintain that explosiveness with the technique. Make sure that your ankle isn't bending, your knee isn't bending, we're locking out, we're strong, and it looks powerful. So film yourself and reassess yourself. So once we do the arm swings, the challenge is keeping your trunk and glutes tight because we've got one less thing controlling our body on the wall. You've taken one of your hands off the wall, so you've got to be really strong, be sharp, think quick, and explode. Start with 2s, work into 3s, and then you can get into your 6s as well. Now you may be thinking, do I need to do a higher level? Well, it's my opinion that if you are stronger than the demands of your sport, you will decrease your chance of injury. So this is a time to have the biggest and best preseason of your life. Although you may not need this in sports specifically, the strength you build from it will put you in good stead. Moving on to our final hurdle, we're going to be doing tuck jumps. Now you might be thinking, he can't be serious, but I very much am serious. If you can do a single leg tuck jump, pushing from one leg, jumping up, landing on one leg, and going again straight away, you're absolutely ready to run. So we're not going to start with single legs. We are going to start with double leg. Same principles apply with all our other jump land techniques. We're not going to go through it again. Just make sure that you land properly with the proper technique. So we want to start off with doing single, double leg tuck jumps and working our way up to doing continuous tuck jumps. Same amount of reps, 1 to 3 sets of 3 to 6 reps. Just make them perfect. From here, we can go on to single leg jumps onto a 2-foot land. So it's a tuck jump, but we're transitioning in the air and landing on 2 feet. Once we can build that proficiency with this, and it will be quite challenging to maintain your technique. There's a lot of forces that go into using the single leg. As you dip down, we don't want your knee to valgus or come in towards the middle inside our big toe. And we want to make sure that when we land in our squat position. From here, we can then transition into doing our single leg tuck jumps. Make sure, once again, our knee doesn't valgus or come inside our big toe on the dip or on the land, and that we have a nice, strong, solid trunk so that we're not leaning either way to counterbalance ourselves. This is quite challenging, but once we build up our proficiency here, I then want you to try to do at least a continuous tuck jump. So you do 2 in a row, try for 3 in a row, try for 4 in a row. It's a great exercise to build confidence, strength, and power in your leg. If you do this and you follow these progressions, you most certainly will have the confidence and the ability to run competently and confidently. Alright guys, now when you're ready to take your first jog, we want to find ourselves a nice open area that we can do some rolling starts. You want 5 to 10 meters that you can begin walking slowly and then build up to a jogging pace. Maintain that jog for between 10 to 20 meters and then have another 5 or 10 meters where you can slow down and then get back into that walking pace and then stop. And that's all there is to it for getting back to running, guys. I'll cover running volume and running training for ACL patients in another video.
Thanks for watching today, guys. Really hope you enjoyed this video on ACL plyometrics, early running plyometrics. It's so important that we do these early so that when you get back to running, one, you look good when you run, you're running efficiently and you're running safely. And it just goes a long way to you protecting that new ACL you've invested so much of your time and money into. So guys, if you really enjoyed today, please subscribe to the channel or at least consider it. I'm going to be putting out more content soon. I really hope to see you shortly. Have a great day. Bye.